So my name is Volkmar Kircher. I was responsible the last 3 years for the coordination of the research agenda in EurecaPro. And I'm happy to show today what we achieved in research and education in EurecaPro. Afterwards, my colleague, after my talk, my colleague Sarah will give a talk on responsible consumption. So at first, EurecaPro is a European university, so we need to know what are European universities. So they are transnational alliances that will lead the way towards the universities of the future. They are, so to say, flagships of the European strategy for university. That means the European Commission wants to have alliances with concrete visions. That means knowledge hubs where they can ask questions and receive expertise. The target is to have 60 European university alliances, which just includes 10% of all higher education institutions in Europe. That means we at Montanuniversität are in the lucky position that we are already in one of these alliances now. These European universities are test beds for the European Commission because they test out what is possible in education, in research, in innovation, and also in interaction with society. And the good thing is that the best practice of all these European universities flow directly into the European legislation and therefore change, especially the education system, forever. At the moment, we have 50 European universities. That means 10 more are to come. They are from 35 countries, include 430 higher education institutions, and they're supported by around 1,700 associated partners. The European Commission stated that the European universities are a key pillar of the European education area, and for sure also of the European research area. Let's talk about the foundation of our European university. Here I want to start with a quote. We are at the pivotal moment in the world's response to the climate and biodiversity emergencies, and we are the last generation that really can still act in time. I think these are very powerful words of the European Commission in their Green Deal document. You all know climate change is not the only environmental issue, especially also the growth of the world's population and its impact has to be tackled holistically. So therefore, the question arose, how can a higher education institution contribute to the urgent global challenges? One can search for a consortium with a focus on sustainability to achieve more impact. And one can apply for a European university that embodies the most important things, the sustainable development goals, the climate, the Green Deal, circular economy, and also the planetary boundaries. And exactly that was done by Montanuniversität. It was led that time by Susanne Feil. In spring 2020, a proposal for the European University on Responsible Consumption and Production, EurecaPro, was submitted and luckily funded by the European Commission, and it started operation in October 2020 with 7 partner universities. Let's have a look on the consortium. We have the lead universities, Montanuniversität Leoben. We have Technische Universität Bergakademie Freiberg in Germany, in Poland, University of León in Spain, University of Petroșani in Romania, and Mittweida University of Applied Sciences in Germany. So these were the 7 initial partner universities, and now 2 further universities joined us. One is Hasselt University in Belgium, and the second one is University of Lorraine in France. They are now full partner since 1st November 23. If we have a closer look, we can see that we have 4 technical universities, 4 comprehensive universities, and 1 University of Applied Sciences. And this is a pretty good mix for a European university consortium. Facts and figures. EurecaPro consists of 9 higher education institutions based in 8 EU member states, and they're talking 7 languages. We unite 120,000 students, 80,000 staff members, and 110 departments or faculties. Actually, every staff member of Montanuniversität, every student of Montanuniversität is also EurecaPro. And EurecaPro is also supported by associated partners. At the moment, we're around 50. As I told you before, European universities have a vision. What is the vision of EurecaPro? So together with our partner universities, we're developing the university of the future, and that is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goal 12, responsible consumption and production, including all 11 targets. That means the common vision is to be an educational core hub and interdisciplinary research and innovation leader for sustainable consumption and production of goods and resources. With a virtual campus and shared administration, with borderless mobility for staff and students, with recognized international studies, also with study exchange of the students, and with innovative trans-university, international and interdisciplinary research. One main focus is education within EurecaPro. So we work on new educational programs in all three levels, from bachelor, master to PhD studies on responsible consumption and production, RCP. Our programs own tracks from different partner universities. So far, we established 4 bachelor programs. One is the new RCP study program in English at Montanuniversität, and we have 3 new study programs with an RCP specialization at the Silesian University of Technology in Freiberg, the Technische Universität Bergakademie Freiberg, and also Hochschule Mittweida in Germany. We have 5 new master programs. Also here, 1 at Montanuniversität, 2 in Crete, and 1 at our Silesian colleagues in Poland. Additionally, we have 1 joint degree of Montanuniversität Leoben, Technische Universität Bergakademie Freiberg, and also our colleagues in Leon. What have we done beside that? We also had 4 lecture series, for example, on RCP or European values. We organized 3 summer schools on RCP. They were blended intensive programs. That means there are online parts and on-site parts. We had a PhD journey where PhD students could travel to partner universities and meet their mentors in the same field of expertise and discuss their research. There were 2 young researcher forums in Freiberg, also with training for the young scientists. At the moment, we have 26 doctoral students in the EurecaPro doctoral school, and they are presenting monthly their research in the PhD seminar series. We're also working on a virtual campus. So far, we established digital platforms for all relevant areas, from student discourse to education, administration, innovation, transversal skills, and we have also open science and research platform. We need that because we want to have joint administration of study programs, research, innovation, and management of EurecaPro. And for our students, joint admission at all EurecaPro universities and easy recognition of their degrees and lectures. Let's have a look on the research and education areas of EurecaPro. Together with our partner universities, we really cover the whole value chain. Means from the exploration of primary raw materials, via mining, mineral processing, raw materials engineering, product design and production, to the consumption part. Here we cover the end consumption as well as the industrial consumption, environmental engineering, and also recycling technique, which closes the loop, and for sure also energy systems and supply. Just to give a feeling about our expertise, you can see here around this loop all the expertise of our partner universities, but here I cannot go in detail because it would be too much. Let's switch to research. We established in EurecaPro research lighthouse missions. How did we do this? We did a big inventory about SDG 12 projects. In the end, we had 488 projects covering around 805 SDG 12 topics. We clustered them, and due to this clustering, we defined then lighthouse missions, so to say, main research directions within EurecaPro. The first one is responsible material flows, that is led by our colleagues in León, in Spain. Then we have environment and water. This lighthouse is led by Technische Universität Bergakademie Freiberg in Germany. With sustainable materials and products, this is led by our colleagues in Crete. We clustered to advanced energy technologies, but we want to be a little bit more specific in EurecaPro. Therefore, our Lighthouse 4 is clean energy, and it is led by Montanuniversität Leoben. And our Lighthouse 5 is process automation and industry 4.0, which is led by our colleagues in Poland. For all the lighthouses, we established lighthouse mission research groups, and they are working on joint project submissions and joint research projects. Due to the fact that we have now two new consortium members within EurecaPro, we have a sixth lighthouse, health and circular economy. This is due to the expertise of our colleagues in Hasselt. They are leading that. So additionally to our lighthouses, we also established the global knowledge alliances to support our lighthouse missions with external knowledge. Just a few research achievements. EurecaPro initiated and submitted 10 European project proposals so far. We had 15 publications about EurecaPro in journals or proceedings. We organized 6 open science events. This one was on hydrogen-powered vehicles, for example. We organized also 3 EurecaPro conferences on responsible consumption and production. The last one, we had around 320 participants, so rather big. The picture here is from the second conference. Here we achieved 65 publications in Springer proceedings in earth and environmental sciences, which was also a big success. We also organized a hydrogen and carbon summit, as especially methane pyrolysis and utilization of carbon is a big topic at Montanuniversität. We did an inventory at all our partner universities and reached then 205 publications. Due to that, we knew there is a lot of expertise, and then we organized this hydrogen and carbon summit together with key researchers of the whole consortium. And we will go in this direction further than in the next phase of EurecaPro. What else have we done? We established a global partner and competence index. We worked on open access policy. We wrote a scientific framework charter for research collaboration with our partners, and we put together a catalog of problem-based learning challenges, and much more. So what are student activities? So besides the activities I showed you in the education part, we also had science slams, workshops on different topics, STEM innovation contests, with language courses, movie nights, pub quiz, and so on. So altogether, we had 214 events and reached astonishing 18,000 people with our events. So we're also working on innovation submission and dissemination. For innovation, for example, we have innovation and entrepreneurship training courses. We work on an innovation academy that connects our knowledge transfer offices, and we're working on an innovation and entrepreneurship activity pipeline. So admission is very important. That means we are translating scientific findings into everyday life of citizens, students, staff, companies, and regions. And we have to disseminate that also. So therefore, we have a clear dissemination strategy. We know our target groups. We use different channels to reach out to all of them. Last but not least, I want to show you the EurecaPro website. Please have a look on EurecaPro.eu. Here you will learn about EurecaPro, about our education offerings, about our research, society, and about all our events. There are also a lot of videos online, so please have a look on it. Here are just contact details. Please don't hesitate to write me an email or phone me directly if you have any questions. Here are a few references. So thank you very much. I'm open for questions.
Eins, zwei, eins, zwei.
We have learned that there are 15 publications on EurecaPro. How many joint publications of European EurecaPro partners are already there or are planned in the future?
Yeah, we're publishing all the time. It is on our website are just 15 publications about EurecaPro written together in the consortium with more of the partners, but there are several more. So a lot of more publications that are really research publications within our EurecaPro research agenda. Yeah. So we are working also on an affiliation for EurecaPro for research papers.
Well, then I would have a question as well. I mean, for obvious reasons, EurecaPro addresses most likely European universities. But as we are, facing definitely a, let's say, discrepancy, right, between technological developments that are happening here right now in Europe and maybe the rest of the world, let's say, conclusively, collectively, is there any chance or plan to, let's say, go this step further and make this rather exclusive like European university, more inclusive environment for ideas from outside, universities from outside?
So I think EurecaPro is very inclusive at its own, and we have our study programs open for the whole world. That means all students from all over the world can study, not just Europeans. And I think this is this multicultural EurecaPro spirit that we have. But yeah, it's a European university, so it's located here, and the main universities will be European universities, but the students and also staff, they are from everywhere. Please, Susanne.
Hi, my name is Susanne Feil. I'm part of EurecaPro, let's call it that. I would like to add to your question, actually, and answer it partially. So the plan really is to have an internationalization strategy for EurecaPro as a European university. But of course, we have a 2040 vision, and you saw the vision and the mission, it's very ambitious. And until we are not stable and have found ourselves as 9 universities and become this institution, it will be really hard to go international. So the plan is first to stabilize and then outreach also, of course, to the Global South.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just once more about research papers and publications you have. Basically, is this now research done by the members, or is this research facilitated by EurecaPro, for example, by common proposals? So how does this work?
So it is both. It is both. We are working on joint publications, but we are working also on joint project submissions. And in these projects, we are just 3 years old. That means EurecaPro evolves, and the projects are yet now to fund. Yeah, that means then we will have the joint publications of the real research work. At the moment, most of them are for sure of the partner universities, but everyone is part of EurecaPro if you're in one of these universities. It just has to be in line with our research strategy of EurecaPro. So this sustainability behind.
So this what would I have to do to that whatever come to you basically that you facilitate maybe some connections, whatever collaborations in a certain area, whatever. So people come with ideas to you, and then
Exactly.
maybe a consortium
exactly.
is created, or how does this work?
Yeah, we have coordinators at all partner universities and researchers in the research task force. And if there are research questions, just reach out to your coordinator at the university. In this, at Montanuniversität, it's me, just write me an email and I can reach out with one email to the whole consortium, be it for equipment at other universities, be it expertise in the same field with from other researchers, be it joint project proposals where you need a consortium. We have all done this so far, so we are here for that, exactly.
Thanks.
Any more questions from the audience here? I just check out the chat. Are there any questions in the chat? Not so far, so we can already start with our next guest speaker.
Thank you very much.
Genau. Okay.
Switch.
So. Okay.
1, 2. Sie, Audience kann Sie sicher hören im Internet. Schauen Sie nur, ob Sie weiterklicken können.
Ja.
Super.
Okay. So, welcome to the second part of this lecture today. My name is Sarah. I also work with EurecaPro. And what follows now is what's unfortunately not really a part of the abstract that you got today. So it's a bit of a jumping into cold water, maybe. I hope you will still stick with me and will stay on for this introduction to responsible consumption. And yeah, I have a confession to make. I'm an engineer. I did my undergraduate studies in environmental technologies and energy technologies. And so I know the feeling that many of us here, I think, have, that we really want to change something in this world. And well, I tried from the technological perspective, but it always felt to me that there was something missing. Like often for us as engineers, society is like a black box, right? And I decided to look a bit closer. So I went on to study sustainability science and to do a PhD in human ecology. And I found that it's really, really rewarding to also look at the social aspects of sustainability. It adds a complexity and it gives kind of justice. It does justice to the complexity of sustainability. So I want to start at really the basics. You can think about sustainability as a tree. Think about it as a tree with deep roots that has grown into a tall tree with many branches, a diversity of branches and leaves and fruits, and probably it's apples and pears and oranges growing on this tree. And so I want to start with the roots of sustainability. And first, I also want to ask you to do something. Think about, what does sustainability mean to you? Write it on a piece of paper or in your mobile phone if you want. Just one word or one sentence. And then also one word or one sentence about what responsibility means to you. Just take a few seconds for that. It's like a small mental exercise to see if at the end maybe you have added some new perspectives or some new aspects. Yeah? Don't write the whole essay, you know, just one word or one. Okay, maybe we can continue a little bit. So if we start at the roots, we could also look at the word in itself, right? So what does sustainable mean if you take it apart a little bit? To be able means to have the capacity to do something. And then the first part, sustain, sustentare, has Latin roots. It means to endure, to maintain, to carry, to support, to hold, to preserve. It has this sustentare a structural meaning, so to carry something structurally, but also to continue something over time. So maybe you could say that sustainability or sustainable is the ability to maintain something. Now, the big question is what it is that we want to maintain, right? And that is actually a very big question that is being debated in science still after so many decades of using the word in itself. But we could say, for instance, if you want to say it very broadly, we want to have the ability to maintain the basis of human life on Earth. That is a very broad definition, but it's not the only one. Then next, when I talk about the roots, it's not only about the word sustainable or sustainability. Sustainability is a cultural practice, a cultural heritage. There is no society in this world that does not want to survive, right? There is no, a purposefully suicidal society. We all have philosophies and practices that actually make us, hopefully, or what we think, sustainable over time. So we have in all cultures some kind of philosophy that relates to sustainability, that maybe doesn't use the word, but it relates to it. It can be a simple cultural practice like saving seeds for the next season. That is something very simple, but it has this idea of maintaining something in it, right? It can be more complex worldviews. I worked in South America for a long time, and we have here indigenous peoples that have this, cult or this reverence for Pachamama, which means Mother Earth. And it might be known to you because for some years it was kind of hip to talk about buen vivir or vivir bien. It was brought to Europe under these words, but it's actually an indigenous philosophy and indigenous way of thinking. And of course, we also have in Western cultures our ways of thinking about sustainability. You can debate the impact of Christianity on the environment and on people, but there are ecological philosophies that are religious, but there are also so-called ecocentric philosophies that are also here in the Western world, such as the deep ecology that was protagonized by the Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss. So that is these kind of ecocentric philosophies that put humans in part of an ecosystem are not only something that indigenous peoples have, but also can also be part of Western philosophies. And to be a bit cynical here, a few years ago, this sustainable diagram was published, which basically says, okay, we are using sustainability for everything and nothing. And in about a few decades, every sentence will just be the word sustainable repeated over and over again. So the question is whether the word sustainable is sustainable in itself. You heard that this EurecaPro University initiative talks actually about responsible consumption and production. And very often, responsibility and sustainability are used as interchangeable. Even the United Nations, when you look at the homepage for the Sustainable Development Goals, sometimes they say responsible consumption, sometimes they say sustainable consumption. But so maybe we can also go to the root of that word. And it has a response in it, right? The ability to respond to something, to someone. And it would mean that there are certain societal demands that have developed that policymakers, companies, universities need to respond to. And it also means through this response, entering into a dialogue with stakeholders under, for instance, what you know as corporate social responsibility, right? So I hope this is not too simplistic, but I would say that the difference between sustainability and responsibility would be that sustainability is something strategic, a long-term goal that is very often used in a policy context, and responsibility is the concrete action to get there. I quite like this AAA model developed by Mihalic, and it has as its very basis that we need to develop, first of all, awareness. We need to be aware of our impacts. Only so we can set an agenda, right? Like that we can think about, okay, what can we do about our impact? It is about sustainable agency. And then, led by this sustainability agenda, you have concrete, responsible agency, concrete actions. I quite like this illustration. So these were the roots, deep roots. And sustainability has grown. It has grown particularly over the last decades out of the environmental movement largely, and then responses to this environmental movement, right? So it was around the time of the detonation, for instance, of the first atomic bomb that we realized that humans can have devastating and large-scale impacts on this earth and other humans. It was books like The Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, where she talks about the impacts of pesticides on humans, on wildlife, particularly about DDT that was also used on humans to avoid the spread of diseases. So it was all around this time, this was 1962, around the same time, a new way of thinking also evolved. The so-called systems thinking, to look at the earth as a system, or to look also at smaller units like a factory or a country as a system, where you have inputs, you have outputs, you have stocks and flows within the system, and that allows to kind of bring some order to, you know, what is going on in terms of energy flows, material flows, and so on. So this system thinking was a very important step towards being able to argue and make good arguments about sustainability. And one very important publication that was also based on this system thinking was 1972, The Limits to Growth, by Meadows, Randers, and Behrens. And this was the first computer-based simulation of the human impact on Earth. They actually extrapolated into the future what would happen if we continue with so-called business as usual. That means that we continue with the pace of material extraction and with the kinds of impact that we have on the Earth. And what they predicted then was that in about 100 years, so that was 1972, so we are nearing this. So it is that the Earth's ecosystems would collapse if we continue as we do now. And there have been updates to this computer model, and they all come to similar conclusions. So they did a good job already then. And I also want to say, talking about culture, there are very powerful images. I mean, alone the image of the atomic bomb was also very powerful that we saw first, right? It is incredible. And then here, this picture taken of Earth from space called the blue marble. And I think this was a very important part for the narrative of the environmental movement also, that we only have this Earth and it's so kind of lonely in space. And it's really, it provides such perfect conditions for us, right? And that it became a very important image also, culturally, and part of a narrative also. So we talked about responding to things that happen. So a little bit about the political growth of that tree. So in response to the environmental movement, international organizations started to take up the topic. And of course, in the lead, the United Nations, right? And there was in 1972 the first global conference on environment and development in Stockholm. And already then, when really people from all over the world participated, one very important tension within sustainability and sustainable development was brought out. That is, even if you look at the COP28 starting today, it is still the same kind of basic tension between development and environment. So you had the countries that were more developed to say, well, now we should also protect the environment. But then, of course, you have developing countries saying, wait a minute, we still need economic development. And I think they experienced in this first conference this tension, and it is still there. It's a very basic tension and foundational tension within sustainability. And also, as a result of this first conference, UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme, was founded. That is actually based in Kenya up to today. There were many meetings and reports and conferences on sustainability. And one important report is the 1987 report of the World Commission on Environmental Development. It was led by the then Norwegian Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland. That's why it's also called the Brundtland Report. And they produced a document that contains the kind of classic definition of sustainable development. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I can always almost say it by heart now, after so many years, but it is still, I think it is still very relevant definition. So we had many other meetings. Now these are the ones organized by the United Nations, kind of every 10 years, 1992 in Rio. You might have heard of Agenda 21, which is basically for municipalities and smaller actors to become sustainable. 10 years later in Johannesburg, where there was a focus on public-private partnerships. Rio again, 2012, where the Sustainable Development Goals were put into place that replaced the Millennium Development Goals. And yeah. And then last year in Stockholm plus 50 also. And I think what you will find if you look at the documents and you hear the discourses around these meetings is that some people say sustainable development, others say sustainability. And that is again, I think, based on this really foundational tension between development and environment. I would say sustainable development is a bit watered down version of sustainability that actually also wants to include or emphasize more the relevance of economic growth in addition to ecological sustainability. So it's, again, not really the same, but similar. Okay, so this tree has grown, particularly over the last decades, into a tree with many, many branches, as I said. There are people who claim that we need one definition of sustainability, and it might be so, but if you look at the reality of sustainability, I think you have about as many definitions as you have actors working with sustainability. And hope you can see this, yeah. This is a graph that I quite like by Hopwood and colleagues that shows on the horizontal axis the increasing environmental concerns, right? From people having basically no concerns with the environment, to those focusing on technology, to those being ecocentric, what we talked about before, right? Humans as being part of the ecosystem. And then on the other axis, we have concerns with socioeconomic well-being that also ranks from those who argue, okay, we need inequality in society because then people will be pushed to do their best, up to those who really say we cannot have sustainability without equality. And in this mapping, you have basically three main three main fields. One is, the one on the left is the status quo. So those who say, we don't need to change a lot, we just need to do more of the same, basically. And you could find the World Bank there, even European Union, still business as usual. Then you have the group of those who are reform perspective, who say, okay, we can make small steps towards sustainability. And even some more mainstream environmental groups are part of this reform perspective. Also Brundtland would be part of that. And then you have those who are the most radical perspective, transformation perspectives, who say, okay, we need fundamental changes. One of them is the environmental justice movement that originated in the US, actually, that argues, okay, it is particularly the poor people who are most affected by unsustainability and environmental impacts. So I think this graph, it really shows so well the diversity we have, but still you can also group this diversity and learn about, okay, yeah, maybe if you have your definition of sustainability, where would that belong to, for instance? Another way of talking about the diversity of perspectives on sustainability is the so-called ladder of sustainability. And it was already developed some time ago, but I think it's still really relevant. And it goes from anthropocentric up to ecocentric views. And anthropocentric views mean that the human stands in the center of this philosophy, right? So it's about us humans having to survive and doing what we need to do in order to survive. And the environment is there as a resource for us, right? While if you go up the ladder to ecocentric perspectives, those see humans really as part of the whole ecosystem. And we cannot just change around the parts because it's all connected. So there are 4 ranks. The first is called pollution control. And as it already says, it is kind of end-of-pipe solutions, right? So end-of-pipe says we are concerned with what comes out of the pipe, the switch, or what comes out of the chimney, and how we can control this kind of pollution, right? It is very much focused towards the end of the entire chain, right? Sometimes I think about it when we talk about plastics and how we have to remove plastics from the oceans. And of course, we have to do that, but it is also an end-of-pipe solution, right? We start at the very end and don't think about what we could do before. Then we have weak and strong sustainability. I hear that even more nowadays, that people are already debating this. Are we weak or strong in terms of sustainability? It has been around for a while, but it seems to be taking up around the last years or so, this kind of debate. So you have weak sustainability, and basically it comes from the economics of resources, and it says that if you have natural resources or natural capital and you replace it with a different kind of capital, let's say cultural capital, then that's fine. So you could, for instance, extract, I don't know, copper in a mine somewhere in South America and build schools. So you would kind of trade off one for the other. And by strong sustainability would say, okay, nature cannot just be replaced like this. It has an inherent value. It is more than just a resource, right? So it wouldn't be that easy to make this trade-off, and you have to think a bit more about what you can actually do. And what the authors call the ideal model is this to see humans as part of an ecosystem. Yeah. And it is, of course, a bit normative to call it the ideal model, right? But it's the way they developed this ladder. Okay, I have a question for you. I need a break. So where do you see yourself on this ladder? I wanted to do a survey where you can, poll and say I'm in this rank or that rank, but then I think there's many gray areas. Like you could be just thinking, okay, I might be just in between two ranks or so. So maybe could you turn, can you see the chat? Maybe you could turn to your neighbor, if you have a neighbor, yes. and think a bit about what the work that you do in the area of sustainability. What kind of rank on the ladder would it belong to? Just take a few minutes. And also, if you're online, you could write something in the chat. Yeah, the ladder. No? Back. What again? So, here, for instance. In dieser Leiter. Okay. Ja, genau, ja. Mhm. Ja. Mhm. Was? Huh. Sollen wir nicht das Mikrofon nochmal geben? Ja. Okay. Gebe Ihnen noch ein bisschen Zeit.
Und irgendwen konkreten gleich, oder?
Ich frage mal.
Und die Susanne?
Ja,
Ja.
ich frage dann einmal, ob sie was.
Bitte.
Warten wir noch ein bisschen. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, share your thoughts with me. Yeah, please.
So, yeah, so I find this ladder of sustainability dangerous. So why do I find it dangerous? Because I think if your house is burning, then you need a end of the pipe solution for sure. This doesn't mean that this is not in contradiction to be mentally in the ideal model, right? So this means if we say that's a ladder of sustainability, and yeah, well, so where do I sort myself in? then we are polarizing, right? So we are playing, basically the ideal model can be at the very end. Yeah. So if we are successful, right? So, but we need all the other things, right? And if somebody says, well, we don't need end of the pipe solutions, then we will not manage the ideal model, and not a strong sustainability, maybe not even a weak sustainability.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore I find this categorization, this leads to polarization, and it's bloody dangerous.
Yes, and that's also why I did not do a poll on, you know, whether one or the other, because I think there's a point to that, that you maybe need a little bit of everything, or you cannot, maybe not everybody can live the lifestyle of an indigenous community in the Andes, which was, according to this letter B, something like an ideal model, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting part, because if you try to look where do you feel yourself and where do you see yourself. I wouldn't say it, it's dangerous in the terms, I agree, when it starts to polarize people and say I'm right because I have the ideal model, I'm the part of the ecosystem, I'm the supernatural. And I fully agree, you need everything, you need all the part, but honestly speaking, you can't escape from being in the ideal model, because humans are always part of an ecosystem, and everything they do, they affect the ecosystem. So we're changing the ecosystem basically, and everything which we produce, everything which we have, starts to become part of the ecosystem. If it harms the balance of the ecosystem, the balance is changing. It's like an equilibrium. It's always, if you put something on the one side, it changes to the other side. If you increase temperature, the system basically reacts. So I do think when we start to think ourselves as part of an ecosystem, everything is right, because to have an end of the pipe solution for removing or changing things in our ecosystem is the same thing as you start to develop things which are not changing the equilibrium. We're always talking about an equilibrium, and this is changing currently. So there is no other chance than seeing humans as part of an ecosystem, to my opinion.
Yeah. I also think so, yeah. And in that way, it's maybe justified that they are being normative, right? And saying that this is ideal, right? But I think, yeah, sustainability is in many ways also a part where you have to be normative. You cannot just say, okay, yeah, let's just do this or that. You also have to have a kind of a normative goal, right? That in a way represents an ideal. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky thing, yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I would sign everything you said, but indeed, the question is, are we doing the right thing? Being if we are part of this human ecosystem and we know what is happening and we are aware of certain facts, so we rise certain awareness. I think we are pretty good at it here, especially. So, are we just, I mean, pretending and partly living what we are teaching and preaching, or are we 100% there? Is there still, at the end of the day, something I can change in my actions, improve in my actions? Because then I can say, okay, I'm part of the ecosystem, right? I am reacting on it, responding to it, being responsible, maybe. Just being, I mean, yeah, of course I am part of this ecosystem, of course, in any case. But I think if I see myself in this ecosystem, right, as a positive, I don't know, figure, then I need to respond in an adequate way, I would say. Because then I don't, I see, just to have this contradiction, because that was philosophical, I see myself in weak sustainability, maybe not even 100%, maybe even pollution control, like personally, the way I'm living, the way I'm acting, it would be very hard to, you know, find a paramount example where I say I'm ideally living in harmony with the ecosystem. I don't know what I'm,
You can't escape being part of the ecosystem, right?
There's a couple of thoughts in that what you said. I mean, who at the end defines what is right or wrong, right? This is one thing. In terms of sustainability, I think we only can decide whether we are sustainable or non-sustainable depending on the on the definition of the sustainability which we have posed. So we define for ourselves what is sustainability to a certain extent. And I do think that the ideal model is, to my opinion, not part of the sustainability ladder because it's there. So we're part of the ecosystem. And our question is, how do we act within the ecosystem? Do we act within this ecosystem in a way that what we might call sustainable, that we act in a way that we keep and sustain the ecosystem in a well-balanced way, that we maintain the world a better place to live for the oncoming generations. So in that respect, I can define, do I act sustainable or non-sustainable? And then I might find myself, do I act in a way that which I would call, to my definition or to a general definition of sustainability, sustainable. But the ideal model, I would not see, it's basically a fact. We're part of the ecosystem. And I do think that this is the step which I wanted to consider, is when I start to feel myself part of an ecosystem, there is no way out than acting sustainable, because when I kill my own ecosystem, I kill myself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's good that you said you have to change the thinking around it, because that's what we get to in a few minutes, hopefully. That, you know, we live in a culture that has kind of become alienated from being part of this ecosystem. Yeah.
Okay, and I would myself sort in between weak and strong sustainability with my mindset. The other thing is, how do I act in my daily business, and just digging my daily behavior into a CO2 calculator. I see that I'm using 50% of the average CO2 in my cultural area.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much more than in for example, an average guy in a third world country consumes each day. So that means mindset is one thing. The other thing is, what's your actually your way of living in your surrounding, and that's sometimes makes me think hard.
Yeah, good point. Okay, maybe one more. Yeah, because there's another part of the presentation still. So I just needed a short break. So yeah, is it? Yeah, you're making it difficult. Yeah.
So yeah, we have in our department, and Patrick is part of that, a project about petroculture. So what makes us addict to oil and gas, for example, and I think one of the outcomes is that the system is for sure not reversible. So not reversible means we change already the system, and we have to live maybe with engineering solutions here and there, which must not be end of the pipe, which can also be humans as a part of the ecosystem, because we are part of the ecosystem and we change the ecosystem. And there were several revolutions on Earth, so to say, right? Providing us the oxygen, for example, from which we live today, providing us whatever as mammals, for example, whatever the way, and so on. Yeah, so this means that the world is changing basically, right? And at the end, if we are honest, maybe it's just to preserve our own basis for our own existence. Yeah, so this means we are part of the ecosystems, we are changing it, right? And somehow we have to fight for environment that is in which we can live. I would say this is maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, Susanne.
The ecosystem doesn't care about us. If we're gone, we're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
The Earth will survive us in any case. It's a bit bleak. Okay, so thank you so much for this interesting debate. It also gives me some food for thought. No, it doesn't work. No. So now we get to responsible consumption. It was a long way, but I wanted to start with the roots and then the growing of the tree, the diversity of the branches, and one branch is responsible consumption. What I want to say in the beginning is that consumption is not necessarily something bad, right? We all need to consume in order to live. We need to use resources in order to survive. We've done that since we exist. We appropriate use, we use goods, we trade them for money nowadays. Consumption can be something rewarding, something joyful. There is this French sociologist, Pierre Bourdieu, whose work I like very much, and he made these graphs where you can see how you express your social identity through your consumption. So, for instance, the level of education that you have, or also the family background that you come from, it shows in your everyday habits, actually. But I think the problem is that we have gone from consuming what we need to survive and what we need to live well to consumerism. Consumerism is a cultural pattern, right? And I have some quotes here which basically say that in a consumerist society, we think that we attain happiness through consuming as much goods and services as we can. And you also attain higher social standing, right? If you have a Porsche, or you can consume the most exquisite food or whatever, yeah? So it is in a consumerist society seen as the route to happiness, to consume, yeah? So in a consumerist society, the notion of what is basic and necessity for us has grown. Think about coffee or sugar, which nowadays is just normal for us, right? The problem with this is that it's a cultural pattern. And from a social perspective, it is difficult to escape a cultural pattern, as it's difficult for us to be part of an ecosystem or to escape being part of an ecosystem. It is also difficult for us to escape being part of a cultural system, because we act in certain patterns, we act in certain ways that are centuries old, and we don't even realize, you know, why we're acting in a certain manner, because, well, we just act. And there's this Austrian cultural scientist, Gabriele Sorgo, who says, consuming is like breathing to us. We live in our cultural patterns like fish in the water. So basically, how do we get out of that? And also one thing that I found very interesting is that very often nowadays, we don't refer to people as persons, but as consumers. And this shows how deeply ingrained consumption is in our society. What is the impact of consumerism? Now it gets a bit leftist. Consumer proletarianization. You might know the expression proletarianization, right? It comes from Marxist theory, which means, or which expresses with this word, that the workers that used to be, how you say, artisans, making things with their own tools, with their own hands, when they become factory workers, they don't own their means of production anymore, right? And they do steps on the assembly line that don't really amount to, you know, assembling the whole thing and knowing about the whole thing that you're producing. And they don't own their means of production and their ways also of producing things themselves anymore. And you can say the same for consumers, right? Because as consumers in a consumerist society, we have forgotten how to make things ourselves, how to repair things. And there was this really interesting research by an anthropologist who researched a town on the Mexican-US-American border, where people used to have their own clay pots and cook in these clay pots, but then they were convinced it's much better to have gas stoves because it's efficient, it is clean, it is modern. All these things that are not just important for us in Western societies, we have to think they are being globalized as well, right? And with that, we lose something, right? What if we don't have gas anymore for the stove? What if it breaks? What if we kind of forget how to be, in a way, more self-sufficient? I think that is the point of consumer proletarianization. Then we have commodity fetishism. So we have, as a fetish, meanings assigned to an object that give more meaning to the object than it actually is, right? So think about you having a nice meal and then taking an Instagram picture, putting it up on your social media. It shows the whole kind of sparkly, nice surface of what we are consuming. It's like a wheel, and behind this wheel, there is how these products or these things that we consume are actually produced. You know, what kind of resources are used, what kind of labor conditions go into producing that commodity. So even in marketing, or especially in marketing, we see the surface, but we don't see what's behind it. That's again also a Marxist notion, by the way. And of course, we know about the environmental impacts, right? Our colleague talked about the footprint calculations. I mean, we overspend the resources of Earth, right? We use more than resources can be reproduced. So from consumerism, we kind of went to green consumption. And this was again a reaction by the economic sector on the critiques of consumerism, also on the involvement of consumer movements that started to look a bit more in depth into, okay, how are these products actually produced? And it's seen as a win-win situation, right? You cater to a new market, so you make profit, and you also sell products that are supposedly more environmentally friendly. So win-win for business. And an important part of green consumption is product labeling, right? That is also a response to the boycott of certain products or the boycott of certain products, where you buy products that you think are better in an environmental and social aspect. And as a response to that, to these consumer movements and to these more critical perspectives, product labeling emerged. And labels, they have a symbolic meaning also. They differentiate one product from the other. But it is for us as consumers, if you're honest, quite difficult to say, for instance, who issues this label? What are the conditions for being actually awarded this kind of label? And it is also, you know, if you have just one green frog or one green leaf on your product, it simplifies complexities, right? It is something that is much more complex than it seems. It is a political process, the emergence of labels, where producers are more powerful than the consumers. There is a danger of so-called greenwashing. And the European Union is working on a so-called Green Claims Directive that actually lists what greenwashing is, and I found it really interesting. Which is these 4 points. So one aspect of greenwashing is that you have a sustainability label that is not based on an independent certification scheme or not established by public authorities. Second point is making unsubstantiated generic environmental claims, such as nowadays you find often the claim, this product is climate neutral. But what does that actually mean, right? It is a rather unsubstantiated claim if it's just written on your product there. Then also you make an environmental claim about the part about the entire product when it's actually only about a part of your product. So you have, for instance, a box of cereals, and the oats might be organically sourced, but not the fruits contained in it or so. But you say this cereal is organic cereal, but it's not the entire product actually. And the last point is also that greenwashing entails presenting requirements that are actually required by law as something that you're doing voluntarily and as a great feature of your product. And I find it interesting that the European Union is working on that. So what can we do to go beyond consumerism, to even go beyond green consumerism? One thing is people would argue we should educate people better about their choices, yeah? And of course, that is one thing we can do. So you know a little bit more about the products you're buying. But at least for me personally, this often results just in bad conscience, right? It's like, I'm buying this product, I know it's not good for the environment, but the other one is more expensive, or there's no alternative, or so I would also say you should channel that bad conscience into activity, become active, you know, And the youngsters nowadays are showing it to us that you can actually become more politically active. But there is something to increasing our capabilities, our capability to produce things, to make things, to be creative, not just to buy ready-made products, but actually go back to understanding how things are produced, how they're maintained. And another thought is also sufficiency. It could be the new sustainability from the consumption side, to say, okay, I have enough. I don't need, 10 pairs of boots and 2 cars or whatever, to talk about sufficiency. And I've also heard that's around Montanuniversität even more often the last years. I like that. And another thought is, of course, it's not only the consumers that should act, it's also about regulating the production side, right? Also with legally binding agreements, not just, okay, yeah, if you want, you can, do this, but it should be really legally binding. And I've been thinking, and this is also a bit eclectic, just some thoughts that I had, that we need a so-called paradigm shift. So what is a paradigm? A paradigm is kind of a set way of thinking and acting, right? We have it in science also, that scientists follow this paradigm, that paradigm. And it's difficult to shift that paradigm, to change it. But we should really try and work towards going from consumerism to a cultural sustainability. Yeah. And of course, it's difficult to say what that could be, right? We could, for instance, think about normalizing sustainable consumption patterns or behavior patterns in general, right? We could reward people who work for ecological restoration. We could, as it is already in some conferences, have vegan or vegetarian food as the first choice, right? It can start with things like this. It is important that we have public goods that are available to everyone, right? Be it transport, libraries, green spaces, tools for repairing things. And also we as a university, we are a leading cultural institution. So we also have this possibility to create a space for experimentation. Many people talk, for instance, about living labs nowadays. So you include society, bring together society and science to create so-called niches, cultural niches where something new can maybe grow, can develop, hopefully. Yeah, these are my 5 cents on that. And I want to ask you if you, if you look at the definition or the words that you wrote down in the beginning, if you have any new questions or any changes in that, or just in general, if you have any questions that are not too difficult. Thank you so much. Yes, Susanne.
You mentioned the limits of growth at the
Yeah.
beginning. You said they did a computer simulation and extrapolated that we will go down in 100 years.
Mhm.
Our ecosystem will collapse. Do you think we can make it?
I think, honestly, I think it will be like, it could be like this. But for me, for instance, for sustainability, justice is an important aspect. So I think that the way things are going now is that those people who are more privileged in society will probably make it more easily than those who don't have the means to protect themselves against weather extremes or things like that, or the impacts of climate change in general. So I think that, it will differ whether you're part of a privileged group or not, whether you can, protect yourself or not, in a way. Hmm? Are you depressed now? Welcome to my world. Oh, sorry.
Do you want some more depressing facts? In the last biodiversity report, it said that 75% of all terrestrial surface has been altered, 85% of all wetlands have been lost, and 25% of all species are about to be extinct within the next 10 years, so like about 1 million species. How are we going to do, how are we dealing with that?
Yeah.
I think we're actually, we're talking about acting within an ecosystem, but how much longer is the ecosystem going to be there?
But the ecosystem is going to be there.
Oh, yeah, in a nourishing way for us as humanity. It's going to change for a while
Yeah.
after it eradicates us.
What would be, in your opinion, like a right way, or if the university would invite you to the table and ask you how can we how can the university best change most effectively, efficient, fast, let's say, and start paving a new way towards a more sustainable university? What would be like three, maybe two good things that you would say, let's start with this and then we will see?
I don't know if there's a simple way. I talked about paradigms. So the way that we think about things, the fundamental underlying logic of how we're doing things. And maybe it's also because I'm a researcher at heart. So I would I would look at all the curricula. I would look at all the research activities going on and kind of bring out what in this curricula, what in this research is actually leading us towards this kind of cultural change, fundamental change, and what is more supporting the business as usual, and how could we, then these parts that are supporting the business as usual, also bring towards a paradigm shift. But that's not a simple answer, yeah. But there is no simple answer. But I would do it like this. I would really look into, and I know that it's also difficult in the engineering because you're much closer to industry also, right? So I would look into these paradigms and say, okay, how can we shift them? And I'm actually teaching sustainability for our, also with Volkmar and Alex, for our new students. And I really love it because it opens some different perspectives also. Susanne.
I think, Sarah, you said it before. We need to, I think my idea would be that as a university, we become a living lab for what we want to achieve, because it's not about only individual change in lifestyle. It's about systemic change, because we are part of a system that we created, and the system is huge, and the system uses so much, and the system has so much impact. And as an individual, even if I change my own lifestyle, most of the time, I don't have an impact on the system that I live in. I don't have an impact on how much raw materials were used for building this study center, And I think it's about giving people a chance to participate in bringing in their ideas and in looking at our own system and making that work sustainably, and then be a best practice for more systems that can change. And how can we, I think we need to talk about amounts, because not only do we need to act sustainably or responsibly with what we have, but we also need to use as a system way, way less of it. I don't know. We moved from 1.6 billion people in 1900 to more than 8 within, 123 years. So whatever we did 100 years ago didn't have much, even if it was super dirty industrial practice, it didn't have much impact on the ecosystem. But what we do now with 8 billion, and in 2100, we're about 11 billion people. So, people are growing, ecosystem is becoming less. We really need to think systemically on how we can downscale.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something about first of all, that university is a cultural space, right? It's a space for cultural experimentation and cultural change and paradigm shift. Sorry.
Yes, we're actually in EurecaPro. We have this plan of opening a green office at each of the partner universities, where all members of the university, be it students, be it staff, can come, bring in their own ideas, and then we'll try, with whatever means possible to change things with the students, with the staff at the university. So that's one of the things in the work plan, just so you know.
I think that's perfectly fine, and when also considering that our university is starting to change its image to a university of sustainability, right? Because we, for some parts, we do have solutions, some parts we have options, but I also do think that the change of paradigm starts within education, and especially within universities. And I do think that we not only have the possibility to change paradigms, but it's also a responsibility to foster these cultural changes. So we have to go there, and I'm very happy to hear that there are these initiatives, but also considering how can we be more sustainable, and considering by maybe not having a lecture at that time of the day in winter where we need to have the electricity and then the heating and stuff. So it's a complete chain of thinking, which might also change our way on how to do university, basically. But I would also come back to the point because closing the circle to EurecaPro, and you were talking about the curricula and how far are we within EurecaPro and the EurecaPro curricula and the collaborative partners in that aspect. Did we reach the goal? Maybe not in the ideal model, but how far are we and where do we need to go? I would like to give this question to you guys.
I think we still need to go far. We've just started, honestly speaking. We've just implemented a study program, and I think there's still very many things that we can change about the study program. Implement new ways of teaching in the study program, new ways of conveying knowledge, freeing some ECTS space for actual transversal skills that we want to implement. So it's on the one hand, it's a content question, and on the other hand, it's a very technical question of how do we free up that space in curricula and requirements that we have, and so on and so forth.
So where's a way, there's a will. So I'm happy to support you.
I think in a certain sense, we are a sustainable university. So what does this mean? Basically, you say make space for this kind of other type of lectures and topics and so on. But I think we are what we are. Let's say a technical university. We have engineering sciences, and I think there is one of the big problems, of course. Yeah. So where can we make a practical change? This is, for example, in all this kind of things, so to produce concrete, to have metallurgy or so. We are not working on the status quo. We are working basically on future technologies. So there we make a big contribution, I would say, and a contribution no other university in Austria can do. This must be absolutely clear to us. So we are working on the right place with our means, not with other people's means, but with our means. And I think we are as sustainable as others. And to combine this with responsible consumption and production, this is of course perfect, no question, right? So this makes the awareness a little bit broader, let's say. This brings it in. But for example, I think to have a study program in responsible consumption and production, separated from the others, maybe it's not a very best idea. At a certain point, you have to merge this, of course, to bring this into the brain, so to say, of the engineer, because the engineer works in the future on this kind of future technologies, whatever this means. Yeah. So I think we have a big responsibility, and we have a very, very big potential to work on in the sustainable way, at least on the way to sustainability. So this means on your ladder, this is starts at the end of the pipe, of course, and going down then to whatever.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's good I mean, we have this course that is not just for our CP students. It's Introduction to Responsible Consumption Production and Introduction to Circular Engineering. We actually have 25 students this year. Last year we had 13 or so, so it's more people. And they come from all kinds of different studies. And it's so interesting to see the background. It is a Wahlpflichtfach, huh? Exactly, back fundamentals. Oops. Yeah.
You should know.
Yeah.
Yeah, may I just like shortly to add on? I fully agree with you, and maybe what I said before should not be misunderstood when I say we need to change our image. It's not that we need to change our contents, because as you said, we are working on the right side, but we need to be seen from the outside world on that what we are doing, that we are going in the way of sustainability, that we're supporting sustainable developments in technology. We can't just lock out everything and close down everything and go in a complete blackout. We could, but it's basically there is no way out rather than just proceeding a way that we are becoming that we are developing environmental friendly technologies, that we are supporting these, and as you said, we are in the right place, and that what I meant with changing the image is to change the way on how we are seen as a university.
And also to change the approach to technologies in terms of a paradigm change, right? Because one of my students asked me, but why don't I just study, I don't know, mechanical engineering, and then I can implement everything that I know? But I told him, now that you're doing circular engineering, you actually see the whole system, right? You still get your engineering knowledge, but you might bring a different paradigm to it. Like see the whole connections and the ecosystem and the social system. Yeah.
It's kind of mean. I kind of wanted to mention the systemic perspective as addition to what you said. Awareness in engineers is about where, and I think that's responsibility is, I wrote that down actually. Responsibility is being aware of my own role in the system and what I can do for the system, and not just implementing, you know, a solution and then not caring about where the solution goes and what it is for, just solving like a technical riddle. I think it's self-awareness, be it in consumption or in production. And I've experienced so many times in the entire material life cycle that people doing research didn't really care about what came before or came after, but materials move through the system. And I think you have to be aware of where does the thing that I work with come from, and where does it go, and what does it do? And yeah, that's a part of the responsibility.
Exactly.
And I think responsibility, if we all act or know how to act responsibly, I think responsibility needs human agency. A thing in itself can't be responsible. I think it's humans that can act responsibly, and that can actually lead to sustainability.
Yeah.
Chat is clear.
Okay.
They seem to understood everything. Good job.
Maybe they're too depressed to answer anything.
At least 15 plus people, so they know what to do, obviously. I want to, if I may, phrase the last question, and is this still okay? Because it seems like a little bit that, from my perspective, how big of a thing in this whole, we need to find the solution for this, we need to make this, how big of that plays actually money? How big, what big role does the, you know, economy that we are living in actually play a role? How isn't like we need to produce because someone needs to pay, like needs to sell because they need to pay the people. The people earn hardly, you know, difficultly earn money, so they want to spend it because what will they do with it? Like, you know what I mean? Isn't it a little bit a problem also to the economy that we settled ourselves as a society?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, follow the money, right? And then you know what is driving the whole system. There are structures that have evolved, like if you look at it from a sociological perspective, there are structures that have evolved over hundreds of years and that we are reproducing without being aware of it. And so I think it's important to become aware of these structures, and one of them is, of course, capitalism. I mean, I had some Marxist perspectives today, so I can actually
Mm.
say it's capitalist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Susanne.
I will stop soon. I think you're addressing one of the big questions that the whole world is thinking about is how can we be sustainable in an economy that's based on growth?
Yeah.
And there's lots of theories around a steady state economy and how to implement that, but so far we haven't done that. And it's probably because the current economy that's based on growth is very powerful and strong.
Of course. I mean, steady state economy, degrowth, there's lots of research on
Degrowth
this.
is also a concept, yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I think we could do an entire lecture series on that probably.
Yeah. We should.
So the question is a little bit, who decides on the degrowth? Yeah, so it should be somehow from higher order, right? Top down, because you cannot survive if you live yourself degrowth, then you exclude yourself from the society, right? So this means the surviving has, of course, several components: a short-term component and a long-term component. Long-term, very long-term or mid-term component, maybe rather mid-term than very long-term, is the climate. Yeah, and short-term is basically the salary. Yeah, so and that's of course it has not necessarily to do with the consumption, how you act as a consumer, but you are part of the system, and since you are part of the system, how to escape easily, right? You cannot live in a cage and you can use a clay-made stove, for example, right?
Yeah.
This is not really practical, at least. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's call it like that.
It's like Gabriele Sorgo. I really like her work, and she says we live in our culture like fish in the water, right? We kind of are trying to change something that we have come to be dependent upon, in a way. So yeah, we can evolve. Okay, no more questions. No more. So I guess that's it. Thank you so much for an interesting discussion. Thank you so much.